M83. Hurry up, we're dreaming.
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's dreamingest music nerd, and it's time for an album review, the new M83. Hurry up, we're dreaming. M83 produces very synth-heavy, dreamy pop music that on this album is pretty... never mind, not going to give it away just yet. This is their sixth album. Sixth. For the most part, I prefer the simplicity, the earnestness of an album like Dead Cities, way back in their discography, but with every album after that, they've just found a new way to just up the size and the sound and the ambition of this project. On this new LP, M83 advances again. This thing is a double album, the sounds on this thing are huge, just arena-sized, and there's an interesting kind of brother-sister mirror connection going on between these two albums. Both albums have similar lengths, intros and outros. They both have instrumental interludes that line up as being the same tracks. The second tracks on both albums are very single-esque with very quiet verses and exploding choruses, and they both end with sax solos. Track 5 on both albums are very kind of softer, deeper moments. The more I listen to this thing, the more kind of similarity I draw between both of these LPs. The first track to drop from this LP was Midnight City, and I've never been a huge M83 fan, but if every song on the album was going to be this exciting, I was ready to become one. I feel like that song has some 80s nostalgia. Sure, the way the drums kind of sound like something from a Phil Collins or Peter Gabriel track, the really spacey synths and the sax solo at the end, but it's really just got this modern hugeness to it and flashiness, and the way it's so straightforward and a little repetitive, and that synth riff too. It kind of reminds me of singles from MGMT's first album, Oracular Spectacular. But now that I have this entire album to listen to, I'm really struggling with enjoying it. I just feel like there are a lot of downsides to this LP for me. For one, I feel like this album takes everything I don't like about indie dance music and indie synth pop music and then just amplifies it to 11 and then gives it a high gloss finish. I don't know about you guys, but for me, there's only a certain number of times I can hear an oh-oh chorus over a dance beat and be excited about it. I'm thinking of a track like Reunion from the first CD specifically. And for some reason the vocals on that track, on a bunch of tracks on this album, actually just reminds me a lot of Animal Collective. The way they're mixed, the way the reverb is laid on them, the way they're bouncing off of everything in the mix reminds me of just some tracks from Meriwether Post Pavilion. Plus, toward the end of the track, and this comes up throughout the album, these really kind of corny narrations by this girl talking about making out in the back of a car. It just feels so fake and scripted and thrown together. I can't take it seriously. The narrations, the talking, the storytelling really does ruin a lot of songs on here for me because I don't really get much out of it, especially the track Tell Me a Story, the 6th track on the first album, where, you know, the instrumental's pretty good, the really cute, uppity, bubbly acoustic guitar and the synth and the really driving drums, but then this little girl starts telling a story about a magical frog from the jungle who, if you touch it, it changes your mommy into your daddy. Parental sex change. Well, the whole world kind of gets weird. I've just never really enjoyed M83's application of narrated vocals. None of it feels natural. Nothing is ever quite the same, really. There are some tracks I like on the first CD. The intro's okay, the 5th track is fantastic, it's beautiful, it's delicate, the strings, the build, everything about it is great. I wish M83 went down this road a little more often. Claudia Lewis isn't a bad track too, nice slap bass and really strong musicianship on that track, some flashy guitar playing that I liked a lot, but to me, that song and some other songs on this album essentially kind of do the same thing Midnight City does, but less awesome. I like the second disc a little bit more than the first. just a little bit. And only a little because the second disc shares so many of the characteristics of the first, because to me this really is kind of it's a brother-sister mirror kind of album. It does have its differences. It is a different CD, but still a part of the same pie. The introduction on the second CD is killer. It's huge. It's just so... It's like David Bowie screaming at the end of Rock and Roll Suicide. But still, the second track, like I said, is another soft verse, loud chorus with a sax solo at the end. The song is pretty decent. The third track pulls out another dance beat and just adds this kind of corny narration toward the end. The fifth track is really tender, delicate, dynamic, and just builds with these huge little kid choruses. I love it. But overall, just too few tracks I loved. Too many I hated. Too many I just thought were okay. And I figure I should talk about the interludes a little bit too. The 4th, 7th, and 10th tracks on both of these albums are short, mostly instrumental interludes. And I actually liked some of them more than the full-length songs themselves on this album. Just some really beautiful pianos and synths and textures and sound effects on some of these things. I actually was disappointed by a couple of them because they didn't actually lead to songs that I liked. They kind of built up and then just crashed and faded out into a song that I didn't really care for as much. But overall, the interludes to me in this album feel a little out of place because most of them don't carry on ideas from the song behind them, and they don't lead into ideas from the song in front of them. They just kind of interrupt and take up space. They don't add anything to the flow of the album for me. I feel like with the double album, with the interludes, with the huge high gloss finish production, it's easy to look at this thing and say, yeah, most epic thing ever, when I personally don't really feel that way. I feel like I'm listening to a pop album. I'm listening to sugary synths and dancey hooks and lyrics about girls and cars and souls and tears and the sky and the night and dreams and hearts and space. Most of the time I feel like this album is like a commercial for something. I just can't really hang with this album. It's not for me. It just feels like a louder, more overblown version of something I just thought was okay to begin with. But that's only my opinion. Feeling like a strong 4 to a light 5 on this. Yeah, like a strong 4. But what do you think about this thing? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Why? And what do you think I should review next? Anthony Fantano, M83, forever.